The satellite phone crackled to life at 0300 hours, harsh against the Afghan mountains' silence. I fumbled for it in the darkness of my tent, assuming it was command with new orders. Sergeant First Class Rodriguez? The voice was unfamiliar, distinctly civilian. Speaking. This is Harold Morrison from Morrison and Associates in Denver. I'm sorry to call at this hour, but there's been a development regarding your grandmother's estate. I sat up, instantly alert. Grandma Elena had passed 6 months ago, right before my deployment. The Red Cross had gotten me home for the funeral, but I'd had to return to base within 48 hours. What kind of development? Your cousins have petitioned to sell the property. As you weren't present for the will reading and haven't responded to correspondence. What correspondence? I grabbed my flashlight, scanning the pile of mail that had arrived in yesterday's supply drop. Nothing legal. I've received nothing. They claim to have sent multiple notices to your home address. I'm deployed in Afghanistan. My mail comes through military channels. They know this. An uncomfortable pause. I see. Well, they've moved forward with the sale. The closing is tomorrow. They can't do that. Grandma's will specified. Actually, Sergeant, that's why I'm calling. There's some dispute about the will's validity. Your cousins claim a newer version exists, leaving everything to them. The line went dead, not unusual in these mountains. I tried calling back for 20 minutes before giving up. By the time I got through to anyone stateside, the house would be gone. I sat in the darkness, remembering summers at Grandma Elena's Victorian in Denver's Highland neighborhood. She'd raised me after my parents died when I was 10. Every deployment, she'd wait on that wraparound porch, American flag flying, yellow ribbon tied around the oak tree. Mija, she'd said last time I saw her, frail hands gripping mine. The house is yours. Don't let those vultures tell you different. The vultures. My cousins, Brandon, Jessica, and Keith. They'd discovered family loyalty when Highland became Denver's hottest neighborhood and Grandma's house quintupled in value. Military brat doesn't need inheritance, I could imagine them saying. They'd always resented that Grandma raised me, that I called her by the name they thought belonged only to blood relatives. I powered up my laptop, connecting through our spotty internet. Email after email loaded. All from the cousin's lawyer, all sent to an old address I hadn't used in 2 years. Then I saw the real estate listing. Grandma's house, already under contract. $2.1 million. They'd moved fast. 3 weeks later, I was back at Bagram for a cybersecurity briefing when Major Thompson pulled me aside. Rodriguez, you've got visitors at the MWR Center. Civilian lawyers. My stomach dropped. Had the cousins found a way to sue me for contesting the sale? But the 2 men waiting for me weren't there about Grandma's house. Sergeant Rodriguez? I'm Paul Liu from Techstrat Industries. This is our legal counsel, James Wright. We're here about your patent applications. I blinked. My what? The encryption algorithms you developed? The mesh network protocols? Liu smiled at my confusion. You did file these patents 18 months ago, correct? The side projects. I'd been tinkering with secure communication systems during downtime, solving problems we faced in the field. The patent applications had been a whim, filed through the base's legal assistance office. I didn't think anyone had looked at them. Oh, we've looked. Every major tech company has looked. Your mesh network solution could revolutionize emergency communications. We're prepared to make an offer. Wright slid a document across the table. I read the number. Read it again. This is our initial offer. For licensing rights only. You retain ownership. Initial offer of $12 million? Plus royalties. Your innovations solve problems we've been throwing millions at for years. Frankly, Sergeant, you could have asked for more. I stared at the papers, thinking of Grandma's house being cleaned out by strangers, her garden being trampled by developers. My cousins had been right about one thing. A military brat didn't need an inheritance. But they'd been wrong about why. 6 months later, I was stateside, discharge papers in hand, and CEO of my own company. The patents had attracted not just buyers but investors. Turns out, solving communication problems in combat zones translated perfectly to disaster relief, emergency services, and remote area connectivity. My lawyers had tried to contest the house sale, but the cousins had covered their tracks well. Forged documents, a compliant notary, and a quick cash deal with developers. Grandma's Victorian was already gone, replaced by modern townhomes selling for $800,000 each. Let it go, my lawyer advised. The legal fees alone would exceed any recovery. But I wasn't interested in recovery. I was interested in real estate. Highland was booming. Every month, another old house fell to developers. The neighborhood was transforming from working-class charm to millennial paradise. Coffee shops replaced corner stores. Breweries pushed out body shops. And I started buying. Not the flashy renovations. Not the trendy conversions. I bought the bones, the rental properties, the multi-units, the commercial strips that housed the neighborhood's essential services. I bought through different LLCs, quiet transactions that didn't make the real estate blogs. My cousins lived in Highland too, naturally. They'd used their inheritance windfall to upgrade. Brandon bought a restored Victorian 2 blocks from where Grandma's house had stood. Jessica got a modern loft above a yoga studio. Keith went for a whole building, living in the penthouse while renting the lower units. They had no idea their new landlord was Rodriguez Holdings LLC. The letters went out on a Tuesday. "Dear tenant," they began. "This notice is to inform you of a change in property ownership and management. Effective immediately, your building has been acquired by Rodriguez Holdings LLC. Rent payments should now be directed to." My phone started ringing within the hour. "Kat." Brandon's voice was different, confused, maybe worried. First time he'd called me by name instead of the military brat in years. "There's some mistake. I just got a notice saying you bought my building." "No mistake." I kept my voice professional. "Rodriguez Holdings acquired the property last month. Your lease terms remain unchanged, though I should mention the renewal clause. You can't be serious. Deadly serious. Rent's due on the 1st. Don't be late. I know you understand the importance of respecting property rights." Jessica called next, shrill and disbelieving. "You don't have this kind of money. This is some kind of scam. Feel free to verify with the city records." "Oh, and Jessica? That yoga studio you love? I own that building too. They've been month to month since their lease expired. Shame if they had to relocate." Keith tried a different approach. "Okay, you made your point. We get it. We shouldn't have sold Grandma's house. But this is business. I agree. Nothing personal about property transactions, right? That's what you told Mr. Morrison when you sold Grandma's house while I was serving overseas. That was different. You're right. That was family. This is just business. The beauty of being a landlord in a hot market is the power it provides. Not to evict, I wasn't cruel, but to decide who stays, who goes, and who thrives. Brandon's building needed work. Major work. The kind that required tenants to temporarily relocate. So sorry for the inconvenience. Jessica's loft? Turns out the zoning was more flexible than she realized. The yoga studio was lovely, but that street-level space would make an excellent Veterans Resource Center. The studio relocated. The foot traffic changed. The trendy address became less trendy. Keith fought the hardest. He knew the game better, having played landlord himself. But he'd over-leveraged, counting on rental income from his lower units to pay his mortgage. When I exercised my right to renovate those units, extensive renovations requiring vacancy, his cash flow evaporated. "You're destroying us," he spat during one particularly heated encounter outside the coffee shop I now owned. "All over a house?" "Grandma's house," I corrected. "The one with the garden she tended for 40 years. The one with the porch where she waited for me to come home safe. The one you sold to developers while I was making sure you had the freedom to be greedy in safety. We offered to cut you in." "When?" "In the letters to my old address? The will reading you scheduled during my deployment." I stepped closer. "You knew exactly what you were doing. You wanted the military brat out of the picture. It was $2 million. And now it's $20 million in real estate holdings. Funny how things appreciate when you invest wisely instead of spending it on." I glanced at his Porsche. Depreciating assets. The culmination came 18 months after the letters went out. The old Hardy building, Highland's last true landmark, went on the market. My cousins pooled their remaining resources to buy it, their chance to get back in the game. They never saw my competing offer. I'd learned to use shell companies to bid through proxies. They celebrated when their offer was accepted, planning their comeback. Restaurants, boutiques, luxury condos. They'd show me who really understood real estate. The celebration lasted until the closing, when I walked in as the seller's representative. "Surprise," I said mildly. "I bought the Hardy building 6 months ago. Just wanted to see what you'd pay for it." The color drained from their faces as they realized I now knew exactly how much money they had left. Every penny of their reserves was in that offer. "We can't," Jessica started. Withdraw. Of course you can. You'll lose the earnest money, but that's only, what, 200,000. They were trapped. Withdraw and lose their deposit. Go forward and be my tenants in their own building. They bought it. What choice did they have? Congratulations on your purchase, I said, handing over the keys. I'm sure you'll be very happy here. Oh, one small thing. You did review the covenant restrictions, right? Brandon grabbed the papers, scanning frantically. There it was, buried in subsection 47C. Any modification to the building's exterior required approval from the previous owner. Any commercial tenant required approval. Any sale required right of first refusal. I'd landlord my landlords. You're their landlord and rent's due, I thought, watching them process their new reality. 5 years now since Grandma's funeral. The Highland neighborhood has continued its transformation, but I've shaped it differently than pure developers would have. The Veterans Center thrives. The old-timers who knew Grandma still have affordable rents. The corner where her house stood hosts a community garden, maintained by local kids who don't know it's where I learned to grow tomatoes. My cousins still own the Hardy building, though barely. The restrictions make it impossible to sell or fully monetize. They're house-rich and cash-poor, maintaining a landmark they can't afford to keep or lose. Jessica works at a real estate office now, one of mine, though she doesn't know it. Brandon teaches high school. Keith manages other people's properties. They're not destroyed, just diminished, living the middle-class lives they once sneered at. Last week, Brandon approached me at the coffee shop. We'd been doing this dance for years, him too proud to apologize, me too satisfied to forgive. Why? He asked simply. You have everything. Why keep grinding us down? I stirred my coffee, fair trade, locally roasted, served in a shop that employed veterans. Remember what you said when you sold Grandma's house. Military brat doesn't need inheritance. You were half right. I didn't need money. But inheritance isn't about money. Then what? It's about carrying forward what matters. Grandma's house wasn't valuable because of location or square footage. It was valuable because she made strangers into family there. Because she showed a scared 10-year-old that home isn't about blood, it's about who shows up. I stood to leave, then paused. You inherited $2 million. I inherited her values. Turns out one appreciates faster than the other. Cat. Rent's due on the 1st, Brandon. Don't be late. I left him there, in the coffee shop I owned, in the neighborhood I was reshaping, in the shadow of the garden where Grandma's house once stood. He'd never understand that this wasn't about revenge. It was about renovation. They'd thought a military brat didn't need inheritance. They were wrong. I'd needed it desperately, just not the kind they were selling. Now I had my inheritance. Every building, every block, every bit of the neighborhood where Grandma had shown me what home meant. And unlike them, I knew better than to sell.